Hi folks, I'm Rick Ufford Chase, the mayor of Newport, Vermont, and this is Newport Notes with Rick, the semi-regular chance for me to bring people in our community up to date on the work that's going on in the city, particularly the work that the City Council is directly involved in. I say semi-regularly because I left town the day of the election on August 12th, which we'll talk about in a moment, and took a 12-day vacation, and I came back feeling refreshed and wonderful. I spent some time with my family on the coast of Maine, grandchildren and my sons and daughter-in-law, and did some biking and some reading and a little bit of sailing, and all of it was deeply needed. And I'm grateful to be back with all of you now, and wanted to bring you up to date on a variety of things that are primarily financial in nature this week. I'll be skipping next week because I'll be away working at my other job, and then back again to do another taping around the 17th of September, and we'll see what we're ready to talk about then. So for this week, I wanted to take the items from the election, the ballot initiatives that folks came out to vote on, and I want to say thank you to all of you who came out on August 12th in the middle of a hot summer to vote on matters that are very important to the city, but often hard to get people excited about. So I'm going to just take those one by one, the first four of them, and talk about them. All of them passed with roughly 2/3 majority, which I was thrilled to see. The first issue was the fire truck. We asked for the voters to give us permission to borrow an additional $75,000 to go with the $800,000 that had been previously approved for the purchase of a new fire truck. That permission was given. The fire truck, I was told this week, will be delivered on September 18th. It's coming very quickly. I met yesterday with folks from Municipal Leasing Consultants. They're the ones who I expect will end up financing the fire truck for us. And I expect that we will have everything wrapped up with that by either right when the fire truck arrives here or very shortly thereafter. So at some point, we'll ask the chief, Kevin Lacoste, if he can put together some kind of a welcoming event for the fire truck and get folks in the community to come out and take a look at it and hear about all the amazing things that it can do. So that was the first item. Second item on that ballot was a permission to borrow short-term in anticipation of income that we expect to get next year from a bond that the voters previously approved back in 2021 to pay for the construction of the water tower. There was a meeting this morning with the folks who are doing that construction on the water tower. I'm told that it is almost completely finished. There's very little still outstanding to do. We expect to have the completed project up and running, I think certainly by the end of September, probably by mid-September. And we'll be making that switch over with the town of Kirby as soon as it's ready to go. So that took place. The permission that we asked voters for was that we needed to be able to get to the timing for a bond that we can arrange with the Vermont Bond Bank. It's going to take us until at least April, possibly even until August of next year, to arrange the details on that note that will be roughly $3 million. So the permission we needed from the voters was permission to secure a short-term loan that we could then use to get a point of that bond income that will come in. That loan will be used primarily to pay back the line of credit, the $2.4 million line of credit that's been used in addition to grant money and some money from the city itself to build the water tower in the first place. So that was given, that permission was given by the voters. We this week with the folks from the Vermont Bond Bank. We have a list of the things that we need to be pulling together for them. The deadline for that application will be roughly the 1st of December, and it doesn't look like we'll have any trouble meeting their deadline. The third and fourth items on that ballot were regarding a permission to borrow $1.8 million to pay the deficit, the accumulated deficit in the general fund of the city, and another $1 million to pay off the accumulated deficit in the city. The permission was granted again by roughly 2/3 vote, And I expect that we've actually had our next meeting with Passumpsic Bank also this week, and we have a list of the things they will need from us. This includes things like a 10-year projection on how we expect cash flow to go, so that they will know that we have the capacity to pay this loan back over time. The reason a 10-year projection matters is because we'll be looking at things like capital improvements that may be necessary and how they may impact cash flow over time. So our Department of Public Works will be working together with our two task forces, the Task Force on Financial Reporting and Fiscal Affairs, Fiscal Practices, and the Task Force on Water and Sewer. And those groups will be working together with Tom Bernier from Department of Public Works to put together a 10-year projection, again, together with Chip Stearns, our financial consultant from the New England Municipal Resource Center, who has been invaluable in making all of this come together. And of course, we do all of that in partnership and conjunction with the city treasurer and clerk's office. That's Jim Johnson and his staff. So stay tuned, but it looks like we're well on our way to arranging those two notes, which will need to happen sometime in the next month or so. There was a fifth item on the agenda that I'll mention, though I don't have anything specific to say about it today. It passed by a very narrow margin, giving us permission to raise the tax rate this year to make sure that we are taking in enough income to cover for a mistake that's been made for each of the last 7 or 8 years, where we were double counting income by mistake that was coming from the state of Vermont. It was called the municipal tax adjustment, and we were counting that as new income, new revenue, when it was not new revenue, and we had already counted it before as part of our property tax income. So the voters were clearly a little more mixed about that. I understand that because I feel equally mixed about it. I do not have an update or report on that because we're trying to play out our cash flow for this year right now and make final decisions about how we'll handle that actual permission that we've been given to raise the tax rate very slightly in order to cover that $220,000 mistake that was made in the budgeting process as we prepared for fiscal year 25-26. So that's kind of where we are, where we stand right now with all of those ballot initiatives. But I also want to give the residents of Newport a little sense of kind of what the next steps are in general around how we're going to be managing finance. The first of those has already been taken, and that is that in addition to the work that Chip Stearns from NEMRIC has done for us to help us clean up our balance sheet and then read it as a council together on a regular basis and make sure we fully understand it, we also, at the beginning of August, had our first conversation about the budget to actual report that NEMRIC can produce for us. That gives us a way to look at, okay, we're a month or now 2 months into the year. We can print a report for the council that shows how much money we've spent to date and how that plays out against the budget for the coming year. We looked at that carefully at the end of the first month, the end of July, and beginning of August. We'll be doing that again probably on the 15th of September. We have 2 council meetings coming up. One will be on the 8th because the first council meeting was scheduled for Labor Day, and so we pushed it back to the 8th of September. That's this coming Monday. The second council meeting this month will be the following week on September 15th, and I expect that Chip Stearns will be coming with the opportunity to review both the budget to actual and the balance sheets with the council at that meeting. The other thing that Chip has been doing, he's just been starting into, is to work with the department heads to review all of their budget categories and talk about what is necessary and what isn't necessary. And he will be working with the Finance Task Force, that task force that Carter Finnegan, Councilmember Finnegan, manages for us. They'll be working together to try and create a new general ledger. The chart of accounts is the list of every line in our budget. And ours is quite long now because it's the same chart of accounts that we've been using since the late 1960s. I believe this chart was created originally in 1996. There have been many, many, many additions and changes and some things that don't get used. And it's good practice, good fiscal practice for us to clean up that chart of accounts. We will be making some fairly dramatic changes to it this year in order to assure that our residents will be able to look at it and in plain speak understand what we're spending on particular staff people, on particular departments. And so you will no longer have to go searching through 5 or 6 different sections of a budget. or even different parts of the general fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund in order to try and determine what's being spent where exactly. So stay tuned. We expect to come back with something that the department heads feel good about and that the finance team can recommend to the council by early in October. And that will be the new format of the general ledger that we will be using for budgeting for the next year, 26-27, and going forward. I'm very excited about that. It was high on my list when I came in because I found it as a council member so hard to understand the current general ledger. And although we had to push it back a little bit in order to focus on more important matters like cash flow and the balance sheet, we are now moving into the area that I think is going to be most helpful to voters and to residents in terms of understanding what it is we're doing. So those two things are taking place, but I also want to give you a sense of what we're expecting for the next 6 months or so in terms of trying to create this year's budget. The department heads had a day of meetings with Chip and myself and Councilmember Carter Finnegan and our new financial and office administrator, a woman named Carrie Schultz, who's now in that office, and she's been in that position now for 7 days, and she's doing a great job. So you can drop by any time. She's on the second floor, and she's easy to find at the municipal building, and introduce yourself to Carrie if you'd like to do so. So Carrie and Carter and I and Chip Stearns, who came up from Central Vermont and spent a full day with us last Wednesday, met with each of the department heads for over an hour to go through their budgets, to talk about any things that they may be concerned about for this year's budget, to make sure that we are on track to finish this year definitively in the black, and also to look in general at the general ledger and the chart of accounts to think about where we want to go with budgeting in future years. Those meetings took place all day long Wednesday. We began at 8:30 Wednesday morning. I finally finished up with the department heads part of those meetings at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Chip went and spent some time with the treasurer's office reviewing the work that we had done. So it was a very long day for Chip, and we're grateful to him for having come and spent that full day with us. So where do we go from here? In terms of budgeting for the coming year, the department heads will be working in October and probably early November to put together their desires for what the budget might look like next year. We will be encouraging them not just to think incrementally. We have been using kind of incremental budgeting practices for years where we just take the existing work that we're doing and ask how much more it is likely to cost in the coming year. But this year we're going to be asking them to manage their budgeting thinking with the overriding question, what is it that I really want my department to be able to accomplish on behalf of Newport residents this year? And they will be working on those budgets. I'll be working closely with them. Carrie will be working closely with them, and Chip will be as well. And then we should have something prepared to come back to City Council and share with the Council by roughly the end of November, so that the Council can ask questions, work through a lot of things, and then hopefully come up with a first draft of the budget. And then this is a new practice that we are excited about putting into place this year. We've had this conversation in the Finance Committee, but we have not yet taken it to Council for their approval. So from here on, I'm just sharing the way that things are developing in our minds, but it may not look exactly like this by the time Council gets done, as we say, where I come from, cussin' and discussin' the possibilities. So if it goes the way I hope it will go, or the way I expect it to go, we are going to call an old-fashioned, real town meeting for January 10th, Saturday, January 10th, for Newporters. It will be like the town meetings held the first Tuesday in March in so many other places that we have kind of given up over the years because of our commitment to involve more people in the ballot and having the Australian ballot as the primary way to do that. So because we've given up that opportunity for the community to gather and to have these conversations in public, we're going to try and reclaim that by adding a town meeting this year and seeing how it works. So it'll be a special town meeting called by council, if they approve, on Saturday, January 10th. And there will be a number of items on the agenda that day, but the primary item will be to look at the budget that the council and the department heads have put together, to ask questions, to make suggestions, to raise concerns, and to give input from the community, the actual input that the community ought to be able to give in any budgeting process. So we'll do that, And then the following week, beginning Monday, the 12th of January, will be called Budget Week in our office. And the department heads know that they're expected to be in town and prepared to work. And we will take the comments and the questions and the concerns that we've heard, review them, and determine which ones are likely to be helpful to us, to be incorporated, so that by the end of that week of the 12th of January, we will have a final version of the budget in which the members of the community have had an opportunity to give significant input. Doesn't mean that every idea that's lifted up will get incorporated, but it means everyone will have a chance to be heard, and that the department heads and the city council will be listening carefully and looking for ways to try and take those suggestions seriously. Then, at the end of January, our second meeting in January, we will have a meeting in which we approve the final budget for council to send on to the voters to be voted upon on March 3rd. That will be the first Tuesday in March. That's the traditional town meeting day, and that will be by Australian ballot. So by the time the council votes at the end of January, we will have plenty of time to warn the actual budget that everyone's had a chance to look carefully at. And then hopefully we'll do some education that month to answer any questions, any concerns we're hearing, so that when voters go to the ballot on Tuesday, the 3rd of March, they'll have good information in front of them and hopefully be able to make votes that they feel are educated votes about the budget. So that's the process for all of those things, and it's a lot. And I'll just say it's actually in many ways, in my mind, just the beginning, because what we're actually trying to move toward is to move away from incremental budgeting and to move toward community-informed, priority-based budgeting. This means budgeting where the community has had the opportunity to give their feedback about what is most important to them when we think about the management of the city of Newport, what things matter the most. And I'm hoping, though this is a little further out and we haven't had a lot of conversation about it yet, but my hope would be to call yet another town meeting day that would happen sometime in the late spring for residents to come together and be involved together in doing some visioning and dreaming about what the city ought to be doing. What kind of community do we want to live in? How would that change our current budgeting practices? Where would we change and refocus our priorities? And then we would give the information coming out of that meeting in the spring to the department heads, who can then spend the summer working on how they can create budgets that reflect the community's concerns, the things that they're hearing from community residents. That gets us back to this time next year, when we would start into a similar process next fall and winter to make sure that everybody's had as much chance as possible to weigh in. One of the things I love most about the state of Vermont is the practice of engaging residents in such a deep and meaningful way in our budgeting process, in so many of the decisions that get made in our communities. This is certainly not something that I've had experience with when I've lived in other places like Tucson, Arizona, or Rockland County, New York. But for years I've watched and wished I could be more a part of the way that budgeting work is done and the way that community residents get to engage the process here in Vermont. And so one of the things I really want to make sure as mayor of this city is that we create every opportunity we possibly can for meaningful engagement from residents in the community. And again, while that doesn't mean that everybody's going to get their way on every item, it does mean that everyone's voice gets heard and that we have a chance to speak respectfully with one another when we disagree, and that when voters go to the ballot, they have an honest opportunity to really engage the issues and they fully understand them. That's it on the financial stuff. I have one more quick update I want to give you this week, which is I'm thrilled to report that the water and sewer staff, led by Corey in our water and sewer program, have been working on collecting names of people who would like to have meters put in. We have a team of 2 right now, and I think there's another team that's starting in the next month or so will be working beside them. We're installing those meters as quickly as we can. We have money to buy the first 80 or 100 meters, and we think we know how we might come by some money to purchase the next several hundred. So our hope this year is to go a long way toward the dent that we need to put in the number of people in the city of Newport who are still without water meters. If you don't remember those numbers, as of about a month ago, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 58% of our residents who had meters and 42% of our residents who, after a decade of trying or more, still do not have water meters. So the council has named this as a high priority. The Water and Sewer Task Force is making this the focus of most of their meeting time right now. And you may have seen yard signs out and door hangers. When we're working on a meter, we put a yard sign in the yard that says, we're working on a meter right now here. If you'd like to be on the list, please contact us. And it has a phone number and a QR code so that you can reach us and send an email to a specific location. I guarantee that those are being read and added to a list, and we are taking them seriously. The reason this is so important is that it really is kind of impossible to create a fair set of rates when we have nearly half the population not having water meters. How do you manage it consistently? And I've learned more and more about just how complicated that problem is. So our very first priority in terms of the long-term health of our water and sewer program is to make sure that we have completed this project that was begun many councils ago to make sure that everyone in the community has a meter. These will be required. People ask me often, am I required to do it? And the answer is yes. The council, in the end, will be requiring that everyone has a water meter. So please come out and do it. We cover the cost of the installation of that water meter, the cost of the meter itself, and the cost of installation, unless there is some feature in your particular home that makes it impossible for us to install. That is to say, in some instances, I think there are places that are not well insulated, and we can't install a water meter where there's no insulation because it will just freeze. We can't put a water meter on a pipe that's bad, or that, even worse, doesn't have enough space where the pipe comes in through the wall in your basement or under a bathroom sink or something. So there may be some cost involved for residential water users to prepare the situation for us. But those seem to be relatively few and far between. Most people that we visit have a location that it is possible to install a meter, and our team is doing a great job of beginning to work at those. We're doing this the way Vermonters do things. We're trying really hard not to hire outside help from an outside contractor, and instead to do the job ourselves with staff that we are already paying to make sure that we're doing it as inexpensively and efficiently as we possibly can. So that's it for this week. Lots to catch up. I apologize for how dense that material is. I look forward to further conversations with you, and I'll be back to film again 2 weeks from today. Thanks so much. Have a good day.